Coming at you from the ATL, from inside the paint and beyond the arc. This is Nothin But Nest, your Atlanta Hawks podcast. Now, here are your hosts, DeShaun Tate and Caleb Johnson.
Welcome into Nothin But Nest, episode 33, which, interestingly enough, comes on March the 3rd, 2023. I don't know, a lot of threes going on there. But welcome into Nothin But Nest. Caleb Johnson here with my co-host, DeShaun Tate, as we talk all things Atlanta Hawks and really try to figure out where this team is headed for the rest of these, 20-so games they have the rest of the way. The big thing, though, the Atlanta Hawks do get off on the right foot with Quin Snyder because, DeShaun, I want to start in this direction as technically the Atlanta Hawks lost Quin Snyder's first game coaching the Hawks. However, I would like to start a petition that Quin Snyder's first official game was against the Portland Trailblazers because Quin Snyder steps into the job as head coach of the Atlanta Hawks and then gets to have a shoot-around and immediately go into playing the Washington Wizards. So I feel like you really didn't get any true time with the team, but once you got to get two full practices that they had this week on Wednesday and Thursday after Tuesday's game, then you actually got to see what this Atlanta Hawks team is going to begin to look like under Quin Snyder. So is that fair, DeShaun, that we can say that this is officially Quin Snyder's first game it's for sure his first win?
No, I think it's fair to say that it's his first win, but it's not his first game.
I mean,
it's his second game.
But this is his first game actually getting to coach. We all saw Tuesday. You were there. You saw constantly Quin's looking over his shoulder at Joe. He even talked about in the post-game press conference that he spent a lot of his time in the huddles talking to Trey and Dejounte about, like, hey, what do you want to do? What do you like? And I asked Quin about this pregame before the game against the Trailblazers of, like, hey, is that something that you plan on continuing? And he kind of moved the conversation in a different direction, which to me tells me, no, I'm not really, like, I know how to coach. I'm not going to be relying on my players so much for what we're going to be doing. Not that I'm going to shut them out completely, but I have an idea of what I want to be doing with this team. And clearly, some of the new things that he's implementing, DeShaun, is showing up as the Hawks get a 129-111 win over the Portland Trailblazers and can potentially build on something as they'll head to Miami. And, of course, we'll spend some more time talking about that in a bit. But it feels like, right, that we got to see the true team that Quin Snyder is going to start to build here in Atlanta.
Let's own it, Caleb. Let's own it.
What's that?
It started out 0-1, and that's fine. It's okay. Mm-hmm. The world wasn't crumbling. I mean, we do all understand that. And guess what? The next game, I feel like, is going to be even more improvement. It's definitely going in the right direction. That's not even in question. He mentioned that at the press conference. You were there. I wasn't at this one. But, he mentioned we feel like it's good going in the right direction. I know we're going to get into some of this stuff a little bit later too, but, we heard a little bit on 92.9 The Game, from Steve Koonin, the CEO, Tony Ressler, the owner of the Hawks. All of them said very much the same thing. That were keywords, elephants in the room. Feel like they're on the upward trajectory, going in the right direction. But I think it's a grand thing that we own the first game. It is what it is.
Sure.
We're gonna own the second game. So let's own the first game and then let the chips fall where they lay. Because at the end of the day, what's gonna happen is still gonna happen. And it's gonna be the same thing that this guy said, Caleb. It's all about to start turning around. At what pace? I don't know. Does that mean top 6 seed in the East? Does that mean a guaranteed spot amongst the top 8 I don't know. It could be play-in scenario. I don't know what that looks like. But I think that the consensus would agree that we're about to get a much better feeling where we're going than where we came from.
Well, and to that effect, though, now obviously you talked about this team turning around before they had moved on from Nate McMillan and brought in Quin Snyder, and that's really been my point of like, okay, if things were truly going to turn around, it would come at this time where it seems that the bad energy, the bad juju, whatever you want to call it, that was around this team as they headed into the All-Star break isn't so much there. Everyone has this optimistic look. The players themselves about where this thing can go, and I don't think that they would have felt that way previously. It was all doom and gloom and like, we just need to get to the break, and it was essentially, it felt like a big, it's whatever. It's whatever, and now it feels like all the guys are talking about like, no, I like what we're seeing from Quin. It feels like when we're out on the floor, we've got good communication. Just all these little things are kind of coming together, and it shows, DeShaun, because we have a new career high for Dejounte Murray.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know the previous career high for Dejounte Murray that he had in his career? Do you know who that was against, when it may have happened? Little fun fact there.
I'll take a guess.
Okay.
Let's go against Portland, 40 points.
40
Come on,
points.
Caleb. You can't try to throw me a curveball. Caleb, you tend to do this. I don't know why. You try to throw me a little curveball, and I'll tell you something else that Dejounte said in the post-game interview, if you will, following up the game with Lauren Jabbar, who does a great job over at Bally Sports Southeast. But and this is kind of going back to what you were saying about, the team and the ways that they feel and all these other things, optimistically and some positivity. Handy dandy notebook, of course. Where he did mention that, he felt like it's a must-win game. He felt like it was a must-win time for the team right now. And they've had 2 great hard-ass practices. That right there, and you got to remember, this dates all the way back to when Joe was first put in line, before we knew before Quin was even mentioned of officially being announced as the new head coach of the team. That, they said we had really good practice. They all came away saying the same thing. I mean, first it was Dejounte, and then it was, well, I don't think that John participated per se, but he was obviously observing from afar. But even Clint saying the same thing. They felt like that practice was something that they hadn't felt kind of in a long time. Whether that's them saying that verbatim or whether that's the vibe, energy, and feel that we got. We've been hearing a lot of positive things about the way that things have shaken up ever since the moves have been made. And unfortunate that somebody now is without a job. I feel that way. I feel bad for any and everybody that's in that position. But at the same time, feeling really good about where it's all going and making the right hire, not just any developmental hire.
Yeah, you talked about the practices, and the Hawks had 2 practices this week. Obviously, you get 2 full days. Wednesday was offensive focused, and then Thursday was defensively focused. I thought it was funny that Dejounte Murray talked about the fact of like, yeah, we were going through all of these things with Quin, and Quin talked about, let's get out on the floor. Let's have a bit of a walkthrough. And that walkthrough turned into an hour-long physical type of practice, 2 days worth of those types of things. And it's so funny, too, because I think, DeShaun, of like an NBA schedule where Dejounte was almost kind of like, yeah, man, we had these like this hour-long practice. And I thought to myself, that's it? Hour?
Yeah,
and 60 minutes. That's how, but in fairness, that the NBA, this is where we've gone, where to preserve these guys' bodies, they want, not as much practice time, more mental mentally focused on things as they practice to get them ready for the game plan when they play these games. However, I did think it was really funny to just hear, oh, these were really physical and they really got after it. And Dejounte felt like that was going to help the team long term. Now, to me, I'm going like, yeah, shocker, you guys actually getting out on the floor, not halfway going through the motions. Those things can turn into results that you see in a game.
Negative Nelly Caleb. Come
no,
on,
I'm just saying. No, I feel like I'm on the.
Sure.
This is when my youth goes away, and I'm like, you guys need to be having these hard-nosed practices all the time.
Absolutely.
You need to get better. Maybe you halfway going through it, doing walkthroughs, is why when you guys get out on the floor that it doesn't show up the same way. I know I'm being facetious and exaggerating there, but still, no, I thought it was interesting that Dejounte kind of let us in on that it was kind of a funny moment for DJ to talk about. These were really, really good practices. And then he goes out and has a 41-point performance, a career high from him. He was perfect from 3-point, 5 for 5 from 3-point. His previous high, of course, like we mentioned, January 30th of this year, he had 40 points against Portland. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I was talking with Lauren Williams of the AJC, that his previous game against Portland, he had like 33 or something like that. So he's consistently done well against Portland. Of course, when you ask Dejounte about Portland and like, oh, what is it about, the Trailblazers that you do so well? Of course, Dejounte's the guy to quickly quieten that and to be like, no. Yeah, they're well coached and they got Damian Lillard over there. And I was concerned. I mean, I was DeShaun. Dame just went for 71, then he went for 41. So I was like, what are we going to get from Dame? And the Hawks did a pretty decent job, I think, of containing him for the most part. Like, a guy like that is always going to go off to some extent unless he's just not – unless he's not hitting open shots. He was going to get his. But holding him for 33, holding him for, 10 of 21, I believe, from the floor. Like, he had a good night, but it wasn't enough that propelled the Trailblazers to be able to beat the Hawks, and that's most important.
The crazy part is, Caleb, is in this day and age that we find ourselves saying, we held somebody to 33.
I know.
He didn't have a great game.
I know.
It's crazy just to think that way, but that's just today's NBA and whatnot. We already knew whether he hit for 71 within the past week or so or not. You still knew that he, I think we had this conversation, if not I had with someone else. You felt pretty confident that he was at least going to give you 30 plus.
Sure.
I mean, that's just, and I mean, that you're not going to be able to stop him. The only thing you can really do is attempt to contain him. Kind of going back to, some of the things that we were talking about before, and I definitely don't want to make this a, harp on Nate McMillan type thing, but, I don't know. I kind of felt like the energy would be a little bit different. There's just not this super quiet, kind of mopey around type of just overly casual, or I can't think of the word right now, but you didn't get that. And not that Quin is necessarily much more energy, but Quin's not coming for the BS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get that feel too. Conservative is the word I was thinking of. Thanks for helping, Caleb. But I will say enough to say that, congrats to DJ Murray. 77% shooting from. I mean, that's unheard of. But I think the other piece is you've also heard a lot of these guys talk about, again, at different times, different instances, and so forth, Quin Snyder's IQ. And just trusting him. Maybe not more per se, not less, but just trusting him differently. That's the way I like to put it.
But they are trusting him more, DeShaun. And I think part of it, like these guys, you hit the nail on the head of something that I wanted to bring up. The fact of this, guys kept referencing, and they have since he's been hired, Quin's high IQ. Let's call that what it is. These guys think that Quin is smarter than they are when it comes to basketball philosophy and that sort of thing. Now, if you pull up Quin Snyder's, his collegiate record, the fact that he's got a degree in like philosophy and a degree in something else and a master's degree in something else, and like he's a very well educated guy, and I think that comes out to them as players where I don't right, wrong, or indifferent with Nate, but Nate was just like, he was one of the guys. Like, he was a former player who thought he understood enough of the game that he could relay that to players and have success. Quin is coming from, sure, he's a former player, but as he'll let you know, he was never that good of a Duke Blue Devil. He was he was actually joking with Brian earlier tonight about their days of between the Yellow Jackets and the Blue Devils going back and forth, and Quin always makes a reference to point out like if Bob brings up a stat or something about him, it's like, oh, did I play in that game? So he knew he was never the like incredible player, but he had the mind that people really they respect it, and it feels like the Hawks really respect specifically Trae Young, specifically Dejounte Murray, guys who need to, quote unquote, buy in to Quin Snyder's system. It feels like that's what we're getting by them referencing him having this high IQ. And I know we don't want to like knock Nate McMillan and not say like he's not a smart guy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just, hey, this is an area that Quin Snyder seems to be really, really confident and skilled at, and all it means is that the Hawks can benefit from this sort of thing.
Yeah, and again, in conclusion to this particular piece, as far as it relates to Nate, is that some of the things, the way that this has all kind of come across was, we've already heard John Collins' comments about how his philosophies and systems and so forth was probably better suited for players that are elder players or different, veterans and so forth, or in different stages of their careers than the guys on the Atlanta Hawks roster.
Yeah.
But it almost kind of felt like it was along the lines of, and paraphrasing, definitely not putting words in guys' mouths, but it almost kind of came across as Nate being the former player wanting to be a coach than it was him being a coach. Like, you get this feel about Quin, you don't even think player, despite how far, along into his career that he played or where he played or who he played under or any of that. When you think Quin Snyder, you think coach. When you think Nate McMillan, you think player. And I think some of that has been what the differential piece of this, and why I think maybe partially, without putting words in guys' mouths, what the difference could be here.
Yeah, I think an additional part of this is, something that even Nate McMillan himself had once spoken on, the fact that he was not really interested in development. He was more of a Nate McMillan. I remember one time, it was back in November, if I remember specifically, that he said something about like, I'm here to win ball games. I'm not here to experiment. I'm not here to develop. I'm here to win ball games. And I think the Hawks are in a position where they bring in Quin because they do want development. They do want him expanding guys' games. And that's another thing that showed up immediately, DeShaun, as you then have Onyeka Okongwu go out to the perimeter, shoot the three, knock down a three. I thought it was hilarious.
That's been the magic number, right? 3 March.
It really has been.
Okongwu 3,
yeah. I thought it was funny that it was pregame that Quin Snyder actually tipped us off that this might be a thing, but he talked about like expanding guys' games and he decided to bring up Onyeka Okongwu being a guy who he wants to stretch the floor, to be that stretch five kind of guy who can go out and shoot threes. And then it hit me, DeShaun, that I was at practice on Thursday this week. And before Onyeka came and spoke to the media, which I was so mad at myself that I had my microphone turned off for his interview. So I stood there, we talked to him, asked questions, and I ended up getting nothing out of it. But a detail that I did get out of being at that practice was Onyeka Okongwu getting fed the ball in the corner, and he was just taking corner threes. Him and Bruno Fernando were just over right by us in the media area that we take questions, and he was just knocking down three after three after three. And I thought it was funny because they Onyeka and Bruno had this whole thing going back and forth where they were counting, but they were counting in Spanish. And so, it was uno, dos, tres, cuatro. They kept going on. And then they got to 9. And I believe, Rick is telling me I stopped myself before I continued on because my high school Spanish.
Yeah, I was about to go there with you. I was going to ask you how many can you go up to? How many can you count up to?
Let's try it. I think I can go up to where Onyeka Okongwu missed his first three. I want to do the
over on it. I don't think you can go past 10.
Okay. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho, nueve. Nueve is where Onyeka Okongwu missed his first three-pointer. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't know. I can't go to 16.
I don't know if any of those were right past 10.
It was. It was.
I'm sure it was. It sounded
yes,
good.
He says. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I give you an A+. I think it was great. You could have been completely wrong, and I still think it was great. But like, and that's the crazy part when we're talking about, Onyeka Okongwu and stretching his game out to the perimeter and so forth. Like, I feel like this is one of those things where it's more of those conversations where, and again, I'm just having this conversation in my head. Quin Snyder, hey kid, I see you've been working on this 3, and it's like, yeah, check this out. Like,
well,
maybe I didn't get this chance to do this before, but I've been adding this element to my game, whatever. And it's like, all right, you keep it up, I might let you throw a couple of those up there. But the moment that you get too carried away, or the moment that you've been hanging around Trey too much and your confidence is riding too high, and you start pulling them from the logo, facetiously speaking and whatever else, the moment I'm going to put, and it becomes a joking thing, but it becomes a coach believing that I can really do this type of deal. At least that's just kind of what I'm kind of getting from this. And the development piece, this is a stretch 4 league right now, where guys, you have to be able to stretch out to the perimeter, hit some shots. We've seen when Al Horford, obviously who was, drafted here to Atlanta, didn't come in with that game. But he found a way to start stretching out his 3-point shooting later on in his career in Atlanta. John Collins was very much in that conversation, just going from a guy who's catching lobs all the time and whatever to really improving and showing he can knock down that jump shot on their run to the Eastern Conference Final. Here comes Onyeka Okongwu. So I think that, that is one piece I can honestly say, not the only piece, but that's one piece that I can honestly say about what Atlanta has done. It has definitely, had its own assistance in developing some players. Maybe not as much the guy that we saw on the other team in black and red tonight go for 25 points. But it was, even though it happened against, right here, the home team and so forth, it was, did you get the impression, just be honest. Okay. We don't think that Caleb Johnson is any less of a Hawks fan because of it or anything like that. But like, what was your thoughts when you see that? Because I feel like we always knew that at some point, not that he's this big superstar, but I feel like in this very small window, Cam is being able to find himself some comfort, find himself some confidence, get a good, fitting in somewhere. and really just kind of getting comfortable within himself, within his game, some maturity among some other things. That's what it appears optically on the outside looking in, always kind of feeling like he's probably going to go off to being this other player. And forgive me for getting long-winded, but I have to say this. You never discounted or questioned his athletic ability, nor his potential, his wingspan and measurements and all of these other things. But you just had the feeling that based off of what you saw him do or lack thereof in Atlanta, he was probably going to take off and it was going to end up not being an Atlanta Hawks uniform. And I feel like that's a little bit of something we saw tonight. I'll be honest. It was a little bit of a somewhat good feeling to see from him. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to crush your dreams all very quickly. What we saw from Cam Reddish tonight was cute. It was nice. It was something that he gets to do because he's on a really bad basketball team. That was 33 minutes of volume shooting that was very ugly early on. Cam loves to do this stuff that is gonna look good when it hits, but when it doesn't, it's like, dude, you're Euro stepping into defenders. Like, just shoot the ball. Why are you doing all this extra other dribble around and you know, I don't know. It's a lot of extra. It's a lot of stuff that is fun for people to watch. And like, hey, if we were here for the Harlem Globetrotters, cool. But you're here trying to help a team win basketball games. So that is me very quickly ripping him. I like him as a player. I'm sorry, DeShaun, and I know I just took that out on you, and I took that out on Cam.
No offense taken.
I watched too many people on social media go, "Oh, Cam, oh the glory days of Cam. Oh man, I wish we could have him back in an Atlanta Hawks uniform." No, because the stuff he's gonna work out just fine in Portland, getting to play 25, 30 minutes a night, getting the opportunity to shoot 17 shots and make 9 of them as he did tonight. He was 4 of 9 from 3-point. So, okay, but when I tell you that those early, the 5 that he missed were pretty ugly to start out with, and it actually led to the Hawks being able to put together some runs. He got going pretty hot in the fourth quarter. And so, he got his, and good for him to be able to do that against the team that drafted him. We really got to temper the expectations when it comes to Cam, because it's like, there's plenty of good, but I don't know. It reminds me of like Lonzo Ball, where just not quite as skilled, where like Lonzo's got a lot of natural talent, but he needs to be coached pretty heavily. And I don't think that Cam's ever really gotten that. And when he did get that, and when his minutes were restricted here in Atlanta, he got unhappy, and then he asked for a trade. He went to New York, and he didn't fit that system in New York because it was, more tightly run that the Knicks had done things. And so, all right, you go out there with Chauncey Billups and a Portland Trailblazers team that needs a wing, that needs someone who can provide the type of things that you can do. Unless you tighten it up, you're not going to win many games with him, but
Caleb,
he's there. It's flashy. It's fun.
I want to throw something out there. Definitely don't want to spend too much more time on Cam Reddish, but I want to throw something out there. With his ability to play on both sides of the ball, get comfortable, whatever else, how long has Dejounte Murray been in this league? Just curious. Every bit of question. More than Trey, I'm sure. This is Trey's what, 5th?
Yeah.
4th? 5th?
And because I'm trying to remember, because Dejounte had the ACL year where he lost a ton of time.
He's been
we're probably
in
talking about
6
years.
6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
This is Trey. This is Cam's what? 3rd?
3rd or 4th. Yeah.
Okay. So Dejounte is probably somewhere around.
It's
double
4.
The
Yeah.
amount.
It's year 4 for him because Trey's on year 5. Cam was in the draft after that.
Okay, gotcha. Um, I think with some maturity within his game and within himself, within
Hmm.
the right system and everything else, all these other things, I think he can. I think he can maybe provide, maybe. I think he can maybe provide some Dejounte Murray type stuff in terms of role and be that player to a team. I do.
Maybe.
I think they can do some of that. I, I
And
don't.
and
I don't think that's. I don't think that's too crazy. Definitely not a knock on Dejounte, and definitely not
the,
trying to get too oversaturated with what Cam has done since he's been in Portland. But I think when you start stringing some things together, I think it's a not that Atlanta should miss him because I don't believe that they should, but I do think that I think
no.
that he has some of that in him, just not in an Atlanta uniform.
See, I know we talked about not spending a lot of time with it, but I actually disagree with you. I think the Hawks would have loved to have kept him a little bit longer and used him in a role that expanded as time went on. You know, we talk about Jalen Johnson and what we're seeing out of, AJ Griffin, guys who aren't getting a ton of minutes and have actually been explained that are probably going to play for one another, that AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson's minutes are going to swap because there's not a whole lot of opportunity for them. There's just not a lot of minutes to go out for them. Teams don't have these 10, 11-man rotations, and so they're not going to be included in a lot of that. It's fine. It's the NBA. You got to grow up and know that your role is going to expand the longer that you're in the league and the longer that you show the team you're playing for that you're worthy of getting those opportunities. Cam, for whatever reason, felt that he deserved more of an
More.
opportunity to be, pretty much he wanted what he's getting right now in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
he gets the opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
show what he can do in Portland. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
going to end up with a lot of the same, unless he does do that maturing that we talked about. But to some extent, I kind of get to the point of like, all right, you've been in the league 4 years. If you were going to change, I think it would have happened by now. Maybe not.
You got to give guys
Maybe
time
this
to
is
develop and all these other things. You got to let them grow up a little bit, Caleb. They're coming in the league and they just got rid of their baby teeth already. I'm going to throw one more thing out there at you, not Cam Reddish related. It's related to who I said was the MVP so far of the season on this team prior to the All-Star break.
Mhm.
Who I'm not really sure. I'm not understanding why he's not getting the minutes the same way
because
that
he
he
shouldn't.
once was.
AJ Griffin should not be getting more minutes than he is right now. No, Quin Snyder came out and said that AJ's hit the rookie wall. If you look at his numbers, they've all gone down. He's playing the most minutes he's ever played in his career, and it's showing in the fact that he's not played well as of late. So what Quinn wants to do is to give him some opportunity for rest, get Jalen in there, get some opportunities depending on matchups, depending on situations, and then slowly build AJ back up. So I think that's why his minutes are disappearing, and that's why there's going to be this balance between him and JJ of who gets to play, and then you see like AJ tonight, he gets 2 minutes. But dude's body is not holding up as of late. It's just it feels like the season's really hitting him because he was absolutely the guy who was the shock of the season, who would really put the Hawks in some great positions early on. But yeah, no, I personally I like what they're doing with AJ because it felt like continuing him on the run that they were going was just going to lead to his numbers getting worse and maybe less confidence and all those things start to build.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I feel like I jumped in there real hot, Deshaun. I jumped in there real. No. Do you? If you have a rebuttal, you can hit me
No,
with a
I don't.
rebuttal.
I just want to. No. I'll do this. I'll do this much. I just want to see how, one thing about me, Caleb, is that even if I feel indifferent or whatever
Uh
the
huh.
case may be, I'll at least try and see it your way first.
Okay.
So let's see, because sometimes I have to have it my way first. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't one of those scenarios where I have to have it my way first. I feel how I feel, but you know what? That's perfectly fine. Let's see how clearly Caleb and Quin Snyder are on the same page, which is completely fine with me. Quin clearly knows much more than I do. It's his job, by the way. So let's just see how it goes. But I'm afraid we might start dipping into seeing like, yeah, this is what I was afraid of is when you start cutting back and doing this and doing that. Now a guy is uncertain of his role, and I mean, not that he has much decisions. He's a rookie. He's one of the youngest guys in the NBA anyway. But he served his purpose for the portion of the season where he did. And I think that that's great. And I just want to see how it works out with the way that Quin is doing it, because I could very easily be wrong in this situation, but I'd like to see him get just a couple more minutes personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does depend on the situation. Specifically against the Blazers, I know that Quin really complimented Jalen Johnson's performance
Yes.
defending Damian Lillard. Like, that was something, too, that...
I was surprised. He said Jalen. I'm like, is there another
Yep.
Jalen on this team? Then the way I see him come down with a rebound, got his head up, didn't even put the ball on the floor, and just completely threw it up the floor to, I don't remember who was open and dunked it or something at that time. I can't remember. I think it was Sadiq Bey.
Yeah.
But I mean, that I mean, you can see Jalen Johnson, and I want to make sure I don't say this too loud because God forbid he comes out the next game and it's like, there goes the old Jalen Johnson again. But I feel like you can kind of see the growth a little bit. You know, he's taking off and getting into fast break situations and amongst other things. And he's not looking as, shaken up or in his head or butterflies that you can read on the body language sometimes, or not being tough. Do you remember it wasn't too long ago, Caleb, that I forget the situation, but it ended up being a jump ball. I can't remember who they were playing. And somebody completely moved him off his square. I feel like they were playing like Chicago or someone. And Jalen Johnson, he was in position as they were about to do a jump ball, not at the beginning of the game, but on a tie-up play or whatever it was. And they were right around the free throw line, and he wasn't jumping ball, but he was just selling in his position in case it came his way. And one of the opposing players on the other team just came over and pretty much just like bumped him off his spot. And Jalen's just kind of like, my bad, I didn't know that your name was here. My bad, I'll just scooch over here. Like, but that's not the Jalen that I've been getting, this soft type or softer type. Like, I haven't been getting that. I've been seeing a little bit more aggression, maybe not a ton, but I have been seeing some more just improvement in terms of his body language looking like, hey, I belong here too, just like everybody else, if that makes sense. And then just the rebound. You mentioned this, I don't know how many episodes ago, about this conversation between he and Nate about, hey, if you can show me you can rebound, I'll let you bring the ball up the floor type of thing. Like, he's showing that that's carrying over, and it's a confidence builder. And to be honest, it is good to see. Just let the record reflect that as much as I killed Jalen Johnson, that I don't mind giving him some credit. Maybe not too much, but I don't mind giving him some credit when it's deserved. Good job for Jalen.
Yeah, I think it is deserved, and I think it's all a part of this conversation we've been having about what Quin Snyder brings to the table is this development side of thing. Jalen Johnson's gonna be part of that development process that I would expect Jalen Johnson to be a part of this team moving forward, because he's on a cheaper contract, because those things matter. And while we won't have enough time in this episode to get into all of the very interesting comments that that owner Tony Ressler made on 92.9 The Game, and then also made Tony Ressler did a little media tour. He talked to ESPN and got Adrian Wojnarowski putting out an article. He talked to the AJC and had Lauren Williams putting out an article. Then he was on Dukes and Bell, talked to Dukes and Bell. Then he went and talked to Jeff Schultz of The Athletic. So a little media tour for owner Tony Ressler, who, like I said, had some very interesting things to say. I want to save
he
that
didn't,
conversation.
he didn't come on, Nothing But Nest or anything.
No, no. We gotta build our clout up, Deshaun. We gotta build our clout up a little bit better to get that type of owner Tony Ressler status. But we'll work on it. We'll get there.
I think we're equipped.
Sure. But we just we got to get that recognition that we'll get producer Rick to call his people
right,
to
producer Rick.
Yeah.
All right, let's pass the torch. Let's you see how they do you, Rick?
We'll get our people to call his people.
You see how your boy, your twin, the number 11 hater do you? He passes the torch over to producer Rick.
I know. I'm just letting producer Rick get his credit, of when he does get the big names on the show.
Caleb passed the buck Johnson.
Sure. All right, Deshaun, coming up this weekend, you've got the Hawks playing the Miami Heat in Miami. Of course, game 1 is going to be a back-to-back. Game 2 on Monday. The Atlanta Hawks can actually take over the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference with a win. And I think it comes also on an interesting time. The Miami Heat did play on Friday. They lost to the New York Knicks. That's what makes all of this possible. So the Heat and the Hawks will be, playing this game, both having played a back-to-back. So all of these just normal excuses of, it's a back-to-back, we're a little more tired, yada, yada, this and that. No. No excuses. This is the time, this is the opportunity for the Atlanta Hawks to catch that 7th seed, to build their way with the hope of reaching the 6th seed. But I think this 7th seed is the more realistic option and where they should finish as they head into the playoffs.
I heard CEO and Coonan mention
Steve Coonan,
Steve Coonan mentioned that this had somewhat of like a baseball schedule feel, because you have the 2 games on the road, against Miami, and then 2 games on the road in the nation's capital.
Washington playing the Wizards. Yep.
I'll say this. You're the Hawks right now. You know what you got to do because you know what you did before the break. You know what you needed to make up for. You know how underwhelming you were. You talked about the rest you needed. You got your rest. Okay, just keeping it for what it is. Keeping it. What do you call it? 100. Okay, keeping it 100. You go to you don't let them sweep the back-to-back. You don't let Miami do that. Miami is not the same Miami from last year. Miami's not the worst, but Miami is clearly not as good. You got to win one of those games. If you go, 1-1 on that one, all right, cool. I can live with that. You got to get rematch in the nation's capital, and you got to win both of those, in my opinion. Like, this is where having that pride, this is where standing on something, means something. They came into you. We always talk about defending home court and all these other things. This is where you got to go into their home and you got to take care of business. So obviously, most people, consensus would probably agree that when you travel to Miami, the most likely is that you'll win one, lose one. Beyond that, most people will probably feel like if that doesn't happen, then Miami wins both of those games. Really try to apply some pressure under yourself to go and win both of those games in Miami, as you should. But if you're neck and neck, 1-1 with them on that one, that's one thing. But if that happens, you got to take care of business before you come back home against Washington and win both of those games. The way the officiating went down, I was not in love with. I was at that game. Let the record reflect, Caleb. Bradley Beal took care of business against you, and it's supposed to be defending home court, and it was Coach Quinn's first game, and all these other. Well, according to Caleb, it never happened, but it was Coach Quinn's first game. All these other things. That's my expectations for this team over the course of the next 4 games.
Yeah, I will have to tell you, DeShaun, I'm a bit concerned with the first game in Miami, just simply of the fact of there's no shoot around on Saturday, so players get to sleep in or use that time in a different way, however they might so choose while in South Beach. So I hope everyone is safe and responsible, makes good choices, and comes out ready to play Saturday night against the Miami Heat. And then when we're back on Tuesday having a conversation, we're talking about, a team who has overtaken the 7th seed and, like you said, is headed to Washington, looking to grab both of those games and increase this lead. So we can have a fun team come playoff time, and we can have a home team in the playoffs. That's another thing that I don't want to be doing a whole lot of traveling, DeShaun, especially to start off the play-in game or whatever. That ideally the Atlanta Hawks can have that play-in home game and get things started in that direction. But with that being said, that's all we've got for this episode of Nothing But Nest. We'll be back with you guys on Tuesday. For my co-host DeShaun Tate, I'm Caleb Johnson. Thanks for watching and listening to Nothing But Nest.